citizen.
Out of many
we are world citizens, same vision is for equal rights and justice for the people them. What's happening to this beautiful world that we're living in? World citizen, lift up your voices.
Welcome.
Oh, you know we got
Welcome
something
to another
say.
episode
All we
of
need
the
is a
People
direction.
Powered
Heading in
Planet
one way.
podcast, where each week we bring you amazing solution areas. While there's so many programs that focus on the immense and overwhelming problems of the world, we focus on people who are making a difference, turning things around, who have solutions that can help us build what Gary Davis, our mentor, called the People-Powered Planet, from the bottom up. And today, on Valentine's Day, we have a very special guest. Valentine's Day is a day to spread the love, and I particularly want to send love to Susan Strickler, who is the amazing producer of the film Vow From Hiroshima, director and producer. And she actually has been a successful director of network soap operas for many years, little morality plays that help people learn about life and solving problems in their interpersonal lives and so on. And she did shows like The Young and the Restless, Guiding Light, and she's also won Daytime Emmys and the Directors Guild of America Award. And it especially warms my heart that she's also a Quaker, as I am. And I think as a Quaker, she's also helping to find ways of spreading more love in the world. So appropriate here on Valentine's Day. So now, first, for starters, let me just have her briefly tell you what Vow From Hiroshima is about. What is the story of Vow From Hiroshima?
Well, the vow from, I pronounce Hiroshima differently. The vow from Hiroshima is basically the life story of Setsuko Thurlow, who is a survivor of the bombing of Hiroshima and also a lifelong nuclear disarmament activist. And she now lives in Canada, but I met Setsuko through a program in New York City called Hibakusha Stories. Hibakusha Stories is, Hibakusha is the name that Japanese call survivors of the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And my producer, Mitchie Takeuchi, is the daughter of a survivor and the granddaughter of Dr. Ken Takeuchi, who was the president of the Hiroshima Red Cross Hospital when the bomb was dropped, and very instrumental. And it's one of the few buildings that was standing after the bombing. And he was very instrumental in helping the medical community that survived the bombing, of which there were not that many, but deal with the wounded and radiated survivors. So our film follows Setsuko from her experience, when the bomb was dropped, and really follows through her entire life to her involvement with a group called the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, ICAN. And she is a very important member and spoke at several international conferences and at the UN and whatnot when they were trying to advance a treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons, which was actually was accepted and then eventually ratified. It was voted on successfully in 2017 and then entered into force when 50 countries had gone back and had it ratified in their own countries. And that happened in 2021. And our film covers all of that process.
One of the things I love so much about your film is it's a real hero's journey story. I mean, it starts off with the nuclear bomb that just totally devastated lives, and just such a one of the most horrible incidents you could imagine. And coming out of that horror, which it shares, it shows an amazing journey of step after step of actually beginning to tackle this impossible challenge. That's one of the reasons why I feel it's such a wonderful solutionary movie. And what I love is that she is so elated when the Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons is signed, but also then as it gets ratified, as it finally goes into law, and she's practically in tears. So we get to share that incredible emotional journey of coming out of the depths of that horror. And also one of the things I think that made it such a powerful story is that it intersects with the whole medical
Mm.
question as well. Tell us a little bit more about. I know part of your effort is that many physicians are warning that this is the ultimate epidemic with no cure. Hospitals and doctors and everything will be gone. Tell us a little bit more about this story, but also from the medical aspect of it.
Well, doctors were the, well, Michi's grandfather, and I didn't get to mention that Michi's then ended up being in the film. So we contrasted Setsuko's life journey with Michi's experience of growing up as a second generation survivor, but also someone who wasn't engaged in the issue for most of her life, and almost sort of stumbled into it by being asked to to interpret for a meeting because the Japanese interpreter couldn't, show up. And then eventually we got involved with this group, Hibakusha Stories, and thus, the whole trajectory, which eventually led to the film, happened. But in terms of doctors, Michi's grandfather and the other members of the medical community in Hiroshima were really the first frontline, medical professionals who had to deal with, at that time, the unknown impact of radiation on the human body. And so they were the first responders. But over time, doctors have really been an amazing force in trying to inform people about the humanitarian impact of nuclear weapons. So the Physicians for Social Responsibility is an organization, and they won the Nobel Peace Prize, I believe, in 1988. And then there's also the International IPPNW, the International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War, and they are sort of an outgrowth of the Physicians for Social Responsibility, and they were really one of the cornerstone organizations that created ICAN, which has grown to about 650 activist organizations throughout the world. But when we were making the film, there were only 450, and now there's about 200 more organizations that have joined ICAN. The journey from the doctors who were dealing with the catastrophe of all these survivors, who, even the ones who didn't have horrible burns or, had broken bones or whatever, were injured from the blast, a lot of those people would then start to have big purple spots all over their bodies, and that was the indication that they had been radiated. And a lot of those people died within the first many months after the bombing. So
people who thought they'd got off scot-free, there's no injury to their body, suddenly they're finding that they're also victims. And that's one of the frightening things about nuclear war, that it does spread. Any large-scale nuclear war would just spread so much radiation, it would make the Earth, pretty much uninhabitable. I mean, it's just incredible damage in so many ways. Well, so I wanted to say, well, first of all, I think what you mentioned about ICAN is so important, because in many ways, I think this story is a story, in a way, of the birth of ICAN, because it takes that personal journey and it takes her into it as one of the people who are helping with its formation and bringing it to such a wonderful fruition, where now it is really the Nobel Prize winner and the leading force behind a treaty that has actually got some very effective teeth for preventing nuclear war. We've had on our podcast several of the people that are in your film, people like Beatrice Finn and Susie Snyder was very effective in talking about how they're using this treaty to actually get universities, cities, and others to withdraw their funds from nuclear weapons. because it is a violation of international law. The treaty prohibits aiding, abetting, or in any way assisting the development and production of nuclear weapons, or certainly funding is a key way of aiding and abetting something. So, so I think that this story is really key for telling ICANN's story. I was pleased when we were in New York, where at the Second States Parties meeting on this treaty, ICANN was publicizing a show you did of it there. What do you see as future ways of making your film a powerful tool for the organizations that are working to stop nuclear war? How do you see that playing a role in them?
Well, of course, there's the public television broadcasts that are going to be coming up in May. So we don't have air dates yet, because we're still working on having them placed at the film placed in this, but that was always our goal when we decided to make the documentary, was that we wanted to have more people be able to hear Setsuko's testimony and understand, her journey, yes, which is, quite heroic and inspiring, but also we were trying to save her from having, because, Michi and I had both seen her go around to all these high schools and colleges in the New York greater metropolitan area. And, sometimes she would be speaking to a room of only 30 students. Sometimes it'd be 100 or 200. But, when you multiply how many more people will get to hear her story, and even when she's not with us any longer, we wanted to really preserve that, because we felt it was such a great tool to educate and inspire people to, first of all, understand the dangers of nuclear weapons, and really we want to inspire them to be active themselves, and also to reach out to their legislators and let them know it's an important issue.
You mentioned that it was so important to preserve this story, and so many people are looking for various ways of activism, whether it's going to marches or demonstrations. But someone who's worked with soap operas and doing major shows on TV, what do you see as the power of story versus other forms of activism, other forms of educating people?
Well, actually, thanks to you, Arthur, and to Melanie, I got to watch a television event this morning, which is a wonderful, you want to talk about a tribute to the power of film and being able to reach out to a huge community. I'm ashamed to admit that I have never seen The Day After. I knew about it. I was involved in my theater training at the time, and I was, performing on that Sunday night, and I never got to see it. So I wasn't, I was aware of the film, but I never saw it. And of course, back then things weren't streaming, and you couldn't just go home and watch it on your own, at your own convenience. But boy, if that isn't a tribute to the impact of a film on the whole nation's psyche, and even on the president of the United States at that time, Ronald Reagan. So I do believe in that. Michi and I both, when we started to talk to Setsuko about what did she want to do, we had been with her when she addressed the humanitarian. There was a conference in Vienna in 2014, and she was a keynote speaker both at the ICANN event, which was a 2-day event, and then also at the international event that had representatives from the United Nations and civil society and whatnot. And she'd been traveling for about 6 weeks prior, and at the time she was 82 years old and exhausted, and just like, oh my God, I don't know how much longer I can do this. And we were asking her what her next step was, for her activism, if she couldn't continue to travel in the way that she was. And that's what led to the discussion about maybe having somebody make a documentary about her. And as you mentioned, I was a television director, and I wasn't thinking that I would be the person to make this film. But we got back from that conference, And I had said I would help her find somebody to do this. And then we got back from the conference, and in January, she was nominated for Nobel Peace Prize with a bunch of the other hibakusha. And it was also 2015, which was, the Nuclear Nonproliferation Treaty meets every 5 years. A conference about that meets every 5 years. So that was happening. And it was also the 70th anniversary of the bombing. So there were all of these events that were happening within 9 months of when we had started talking about a documentary. And I am aware that when these things are happening, you kind of can't wait around. You can't you can't wait till you raise the money. You just have to start shooting film. So we flew up to Toronto, where Setsuko lives, and had a discussion with her and started filming immediately. And again, I just, we had no money, we had no script, and suddenly I was the director. So I got somebody I knew through New York Woman in Film and Television to be our camera person, and we just started and made a schedule, and off we went.
Wow, that's great. So many of us filmmakers are in that same boat. When we did the World is My Country, the Gary Davis story, we spent a couple of years trying to get funding and foundations. Nobody understood the power of the story. And finally, we just had to jump in and do it. And we really did it just in the nick of time, because the very final filming happened like 2 weeks before Gary passed away. So we were able to capture that incredible story of world citizen #1, Gary Davis. And I think as you've been mentioning, I think story is key to shifting people's thinking. Did you find that also when you were working in the realm of soap operas that deal with issues like race and gender and sexuality and class and so on? Did you find that they were also a means of getting people to think and affecting people from an emotional level and improving values? Or did you feel they were just basically dishing out soap?
I have to say that even though there are a lot of stories within the soap opera genre that are a bit offensive, if you're a feminist, which I am, and there are certain old storylines where, women will get pregnant to trap their partner because they find out he's going to leave them, and, that sort of thing, which I have always found rather offensive. I mean, that people do it, and that we would represent it then, and tell that story as if that's a good strategy. That always bothered me. But having said that, there were a lot of social issues that the soap operas did take on. And golly, when I was in high school, I mean, a really long time ago, they had the first lesbian character on All My Children. They've shown, they've talked about abortion over the years. I mean, I don't know that they would feel they could do that now, but they did present that. They've had gay characters, homeless characters. They really did try and take on social issues and bring them in a, again, what people characterize as a entertainment for housewives who are home taking care of the children, and kind of their world is rather small at that stage of their lives. You know what I mean? So it's like their stories become sort of their friends, their neighbors, the people that they're engaged with. But as I say, there are a lot of storylines that have been extremely impactful, and I think made that sort of, if you will, middle American audience much more sympathetic to certain of these topics. And also, I just want to say, it's very funny because, again, people kind of disparage it as an art. I hesitate to call it an art form, but as an entertainment. But I can't tell you how many times I've been in places where very surprising, very educated, very informed people find comfort in watching these shows on a daily basis. It's really, I've always been like, whoa, you're a soap opera fan? So it's, or a specific, often it's a specific show fan. But yeah, it's surprising. It is what it is. And one last thing about that. When people ask how did I go from being a soap opera director to working on a documentary about, nuclear disarmament, basically. And again, there's this sort of implication that, like, well, why would you do that, that other work, the soap opera work? But at the time, there were not many places where women could be directors, you know? So directors or writers or producers. And the preponderance of the staffs of the soap operas is at now certainly is mostly women, not exclusively, but mostly women. And I really got a skill set from directing an hour episode a week. And I think I've done, I don't know, over 700. And if you think about like a person who directs feature films, and let's just say the average film is 2 hours long, let's just say that. Well, how many hours have they directed? And, now, in terms of what people get to see. So you really, and there is a standard that you have to work fast, you have to make decisions very quickly, but it has to be, of a certain quality or it wouldn't be on the air. Do you know what I mean? And so I felt like I had a really deep-seated skill set when I started making the documentary from all those years of producing and directing soaps. So,
well, that's terrific, and I think it comes through in the movie that you have that that skill set, that real skill as a storyteller. And of course, you made it as a documentary film, but now you're reaching out to get that on television as well. Tell us a little bit more about the upcoming broadcasts and what you envision there, and what it took to begin to get this onto PBS.
Oh, golly.
PBS station.
How many hours do you have? We finished the film in 2019, in May of 2019. And of course, at that time, we were expecting to do the typical, what a first-time filmmaker would do, which is take it out to film festivals. So we started strategizing where was the place that we wanted to have it premiered, et cetera, et cetera. Well, that took about 9 months to, line up all these film festivals to go to and whatnot. And we were supposed to have our world premiere on March 25th, 2020. And of course, the world shut down with COVID in March 13th, 2020. So we lost a big chunk, like 2.5 years, and had to sort of start from scratch. But I have to say, as was the case when we were making the film, we had delays because we were raising money, and we had thought we would be making the film in, I don't know, 2 years maybe. And because we had to take breaks to raise money to continue to film, we actually benefited from that in the long run, because the treaty, which I wasn't at all certain would ever pass, did pass. And so we were able to film all of that and see the excitement in those moments. If we had finished the film when we thought we were going to, we would have missed the treaty. And then right after that, they got ICANN, and Setsuko was asked to give the Nobel speech with them, and we would have missed that. So sometimes those unfortunate, what at the moment seemed like unfortunate events, turn into blessings, because that delay made it possible for us to incorporate all of that footage and those exciting events in the film. And likewise, with the delay because of COVID, then the treaty actually entered into force in 2021, which we did a little epilogue of the film afterwards, because the film did sort of have a big question mark at the end, because Setsuko is still saying we have to talk to our government officials and get them to pass this treaty and all of that. And we were then, because of the delay, able to include the epilogue in our film and show that the treaty did in fact enter into force. So that was, again, a blessing, which was hard to know that was going to happen at the time.
And to me, it grows out of the Quaker roots of being still and knowing that the power is there and things are going to come forward. And that is that we also found with our film that virtually every obstacle, every time we ran into a challenge, it turned out to be it was for the better. It was like amazing. It was like, oh, there was a reason for this. And if we know that, it gives us a certain way of centering in the midst of challenges and things that seem horrible, where instead of wringing our hands and saying, "Oh no, what are we going to do?" we catch that this is part of the plan, this is part of the opportunity, and we stay open and aware of it, and we don't give up. We keep going, so I feel that there's a very, very deep truth in what you've just said. Did you find that also, carried through from Quaker values, from the spiritual center to appreciate these miracles that are abounding as we tell the stories that the universe needs, that the world needs?
Yeah. Well, Arthur, I think you're further along on that journey than I am. I tend to swear a lot when these things happen, it takes me a while to get more centered, and it's more in the rearview mirror that I understand it as a blessing, not in the moment. So I don't want to misrepresent myself as this, spiritually profound, or having a spiritually profound understanding of these things. But in retrospect, I do see it that way. And maybe that's helping me on my spiritual journey.
And I'm glad we touched on that. But now I think it is important to move on to the key thing, which is what everybody on the show here needs to know, and that is the journey that's taking us on to PBS, where we'll hopefully be reaching millions of people. So tell us a little bit more about that.
I believe you are familiar with the Show and Tell, which is a program that shepherds filmmakers, documentary filmmakers, into finding ways to make their films more successful. The documentary film landscape has really changed a lot. 20 years ago, everybody just wanted it to be on either HBO or get, streaming on, one of the platforms like Netflix or whatever. But those platforms are not as open, because they produce a lot of their own material now. So it's not as easy to gain access to that. So Keith, he's a lovely man, and he had made a documentary. I know I'm telling you, I know you know this, but I'm sort of explaining this a bit to your audience. But
Okay.
In his making a documentary and trying to find a way to get it out to people, but also to monetize it, because so many of us, invest our own money and as we go along with documentaries and whatnot, and it can feel like it's hard to find you. Sometimes the audience that you think are your natural audience turn out not to be the best supporters. And so trying to, first of all, identify who those people are, those organizations perhaps, but individuals as well. He helps people identify that, filmmakers identify that. And he also had come up with this way of, there are many tiers to what he encourages people to do. To have conferences and with your film being featured, and then also to have question and answer periods afterwards and that sort of thing. But also he found this way sort of through the back door, I think, of public television. Our film is not going to be on one of their premiere programs like, what are they, American
Experience or
POV, or one of those. This is a little bit more, I don't know, on a grassroots, shall we say, level of getting into public television, so that once you get accepted by one of the programs that makes available, for example, NIDA is one of the programs, and there are some others as well, PBS Plus and whatnot, and they
American Public Television.
Yeah, and they accept documentaries into their program, and then they encourage you to go out and find underwriters, which is a way to fund yourself while you're going through the process of preparing your film. Like, we had to edit our film down. It's originally 84 minutes, and now it's their 56-minute version that they prefer. Well, that's a full third of our film that we had to edit out. And then there's all of the closed captioning and all of the quality control and
Right.
there's just so many things and they all end up costing money. And so getting underwriters helps you finance that part of it, but it's also an opportunity for us to pay ourselves back for, in my case, and Michi's in my case, 9 years of unpaid work.
Right.
So we never had a salary. We've been doing this for 9 years. Very different than working on soap operas, let me say. And so we're at that stage now. So we have completed all of the rigorous uh, standards for public television, and now we're busily we have somebody who is helping us place the film well, as many of the 350 public television stations around the country as we can. And it's going to be on during Asian American uh, Pacific Islander month, which is May. And and we'll see. I mean, we don't
Right.
know yet how many stations it's going to be on. We're keeping our fingers crossed. But then they have the opportunity over 3 years to show it, maybe during the anniversary of the bombings, of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which is August 6th and 9th, or, there's an international, peace day, an international day for this or that. And then once the stations become aware of your material, they can choose to air it, in conjunction with, one of those kinds of events. So,
Well, that's an excellent overview of how this show and tell works, which we've used for our film as well. We got our film on over 100 PBS stations using that technique, and now now we're working to promote the film that you also mentioned, a television event about the day after, and working to get that. We're starting on American Public Television. We have the first air dates will be in April, but we're also working on finding sponsors for that and so on. Now, I understand that the sponsor you have is actually promoting some of the organizations doing work on this subject, or what are some of the are we likely to see at the beginning of the film when we hear what this is brought to you by?
well, okay, we already had an established relationship with the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation, which their headquarters is in Santa Barbara, and they actually had hosted a screening of our film. Um, Golly, was that last? I think that was last year. I'm sorry. And so we went out to Santa Barbara, and they had a screening, and then they ended up being one of our underwriters. There's also a group called the Naropa University. That is an organization dedicated to peace and activism. And so they're one of our underwriters. And then the third underwriter helps people put their money privately in a way that is, that they aren't necessarily attached to that investment. So it's the organization that invests for them so that they are not inundated with requests for donations and that kind of thing. And so they invest their money in whatever cause. So it can be, Black Lives Matter related, or it could be, climate change, or it could be this or that, or the other thing. So it's a very reputable and good organization that cares about how people invest their money. And so, they're one of our underwriters as well.
Socially responsible investment is super key to all of this, because so many of these challenges we face. I mean, when you look at it, the lobbyists that are pressing for all these huge expenses of nuclear weapons are really only representing a very small number of companies. It's not really crucial to the economy or to have the dangers far outweigh the advantage. And disinvesting and having people focus more on socially positive investment is absolutely crucial to turning this around. So I'm glad you've got a backer that's in that area, because that's what we need now. Sort of follow the money thing. That many people have said, if we made peace profitable, boy, peace would really be coming quick. And it will be profitable. It'll be much more profitable, but it takes a little longer term vision to understand and realize that. Are we getting close to where we should open this up to questions, Melanie?
Yes, I would like to quickly come in and say, Susan, that I was just laughing like crazy when you said that you didn't realize you were going to be the director producer on this film, Vow from Hiroshima. It's so funny how things work out. And I just, kudos to you, because you saw something that needed to be done. You saw that these events were coming up. You had to film them. And okay, it's me. And you jump in and Mitchie's there. And it's just, what a beautiful story. What an inspiration for people who are like, well, okay, we got to get people involved to do this who knew how to do this. But sometimes it's you. And look what a difference you made. Look what a difference you made with this film already. I mean, as you said, here's a record that's going to last for years and years and years and years, showing exactly what happened, how we got this treaty, and this phenomenal story that people haven't heard. And as far as having this divestment, socially responsible investment, people don't realize that. Here you think, oh, I just have a bank, or I just, I have one investment in such and such. But no, it's you might be giving money to nuclear weapons. And if you see Vow from Hiroshima and you're like, oh, this is horrible, I would never be a part of it. Well, maybe you are. So take a look and go to Don't Bake on the Bomb. You can also go to theworldismycountry.com/endorse. And there we have, because we're all world citizens and people who have raised their thinking to a higher level. Yes, I care about the planet. We have world issues we need to take care of together. We have to get along to fix these. Go to that URL and you can sign, endorse, and honor the treaty, the ban on nuclear weapons. You as a world citizen have a voice. And what it is divesting. And it'll show different websites like Weapon Free Funds, where it's really simple. You put the ticker in, here's my fund ticker, and boom, it gets an A or an F, and then change your money. Don't bang on the bomb, move what bank you're with. I was with Wells Fargo, and and then I moved to, what you could do is go to San Diego County Credit Union, or a credit union. Smaller banks are pretty good bet. And I recently, at the second meetings of the state parties, met a woman, wonderful, but it's Italian, so I can't be a part of it, but a man who, his bank is totally socially responsible. So anyway, thank you for this. Thank you for making this film. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. Yes, as far as questions, we have a comment. Jack would like to ask you about if you know something. So let's go to Jack. Jack, go right ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation. I certainly, as all of us, are very concerned where we are in the world today with our, most of us have had our ride pretty good, but there's a lot of young people coming, and 3 of them are kids of mine and 8 of them are grandkids. So as I look at where we're at, and I created a foundation through Rotary to help Rotary build a cleaner, greener, healthier, more peaceful planet. So we all have a way we look at this and the way we want to do things. I made a motion that Rotary build or be involved in a global digital platform where researchers can come together no matter what language they speak, that their information, whether it be nuclear, whether it be climatic, that information be shared, and that we protect them, because they are being threatened by corporations and governments. And I think read one of the more profound books I've ever read, called Voltaire's Bastards, which exposes the elites over many centuries of power. And so I'm very aware now that most countries are like 70% working on weapons. Now, weapons you either use or you store. And it is not a growth industry. It is not a growth economy to do that. We are in a very dangerous time with that. Not only that, I mean, even some of the fact that what's happening climatically there too. So I love, Arthur, where you begin, and Mel, you begin with world citizenship. You begin by saying all human beings have value, and that and so the Creative Society group has, what I like about them, even above Rotary, okay, is that they have 8 pillars that they have established, and they have a way forward for us as good as I've ever seen. In other words, in my province of British Columbia, we're about to have an election, so we're going to vote in somebody, and you are too, in November. But if those people had a signed document to follow those 8 pillars, and that the minute that AI picked up that they had voted or written or done anything or transferred any money that violated one of those 8 principles, they would be immediately recalled. And so they do have a way forward economically, politically, I think even environmentally as best we can. I think just so all I'm saying is that they can really produce beautiful work. And if I take my vision and I give it, or I work with them, and you take yours and you work with them, and we all work together in that way. They've already got, I think, like we're always struggling to find money, right? They have a lot of very talented people that are committed to getting the message done properly. So in your case, it was a beautiful message, but it would have been nice that you have said, here's my message. Instead of having time and trying to get money and do all of that, they would say that message fits. And now let's like in Rotary, we do a lot of volunteer, right, to get things done. So wouldn't it be nice if you could have done your movie where you've got a lot of talented people committed to our children to do that movie and not have to beg and borrow for some money? I would look at Creative Society as a way that might be a way for all of us to take what we're doing and maybe move the needle a bit faster and better. That's all. Thank you.
Susan, any comments?
It's a truth, that we get having to struggle all the time to find the funds is unfortunate, because that energy could be spent doing the real work rather than just trying to raise the money, and that there is a lot of money out there, and yet all these billionaires have multiple yachts and this and that and the other thing, and it's like, really, like, how many of those do you need? So but yeah, but also just divesting from, or not having nuclear weapons, not maintaining nuclear weapon stockpiles and staff to oversee them and all of that. We could take all those trillions of dollars and we could be putting that into not just making movies, of course, but feeding people, creating housing for the homeless. I mean, there's so many things that we could be focusing on, reducing our, our pollution in the world, there's just so many things that all of that money could be helpful for, but, instead of having yachts, but
Exactly. We need a more caring society. My goodness. Looks like we better go a little quicker now, because we have David. David, do you want to go right ahead and make your comment or question?
Yeah. Hi, Susan. So thank you so much for being with us today. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to hear what lessons you learned from your being a director on soap operas and being able to tell emotional stories, and then take the power of the story and use that to tell Thurlow's story and raise awareness of the nuclear threat.
Thanks, David. That's really a great question. And, when Mitchie and I started making the film, right away we knew there's not a lot, but there are several movies about, the dropping of the bomb and whatnot. And sometimes it gets so into the horrors of it that people can't really watch it. And And so if it's, you tell a story where it's focusing on the horrors and not on the emotional through line in somebody's life, you know, you lose your audience right away. One of the men who's in our film, Ira Helfand, when he speaks about, he goes around and of course talks about the, you know, what would happen if there was a nuclear war and whatnot. And Ira always thanks people at the beginning of his talk and says, I thank you for being brave enough to come in here and just listen to what are the realities of, you know, if there were a nuclear war. And then at the end of his talk, he says, now I'm going to ask you to be brave one more time. And what I would like you to do is not walk out that door and push it away because it's such a horrible reality. Do you know? And so please, when you leave, don't distract yourself and keep this and be brave and talk about it with people and whatnot. And that is certainly what we were striving for, was to really appeal to people's emotions. So that's such a great question. And Mitchie always used to say, because, you know, when we were trying to raise money in the beginning, honestly, people didn't think I was capable of making a documentary, because I had never made a film before. And there was also this little bit of a sense of like soap operas, like how has that prepared you to do this, you know? And first of all, I mean, you learn a lot about technical stuff making a soap opera, let's just say that, you know. And then secondly, that is the trying to really continuously focus on the emotional life of your main characters in your film. And I think that I always feel the real success of our film is when people tell me how many times they cried and how moved they were. And because that's what they'll leave with, the emotional impact of those stories. That's what they're going to remember. And they still are going to push away the horrors of, you know, and that's also why we chose to use a lot of artwork rather than graphic photographs, because we also wanted this to be able to be used in a school environment. So like junior, maybe not before junior high, of course, but like junior high and high school, we don't want kids going home with nightmares. We wanted them to, you know, somehow when they see a drawing of the horrors of what happened, it allows them that, you know, that little bit of a step back. So they still understand what it was, but they're not looking at human beings in that, you know, in that state. And I think that those are the ways in which we really tried to engage people's emotions. And I do feel like that that is a part of that is, you know, the sensibility that you get from working on a soap opera and understanding that it's the emotional moments that people remember and make them want to make a change or have an understanding about an issue. That's where it is. Not all this, you know, figures and meaning numbers and, you know, they have this many bombs and we have that many bombs, and, you know, it's the human story that makes people get engaged, I think. So that was a great question. Thanks, David. I appreciate it.
Yes, and as far as soap operas, they can teach someone how to be empathetic too. And, you know, oh, I get it now. That would be like that if I was doing that. So soap operas are very important. Now, quickly, we're going to go to Michael. Michael, go right ahead.
I was wondering, do you have a future documentary project in mind? And if so, what would it be about?
I have a few ideas that I'm batting around, but honestly, I'm not prepared to really, you know, to share them at this time. I'm still recovering. We're still working on it. It's 9 years, you know what I mean? So it's,
wow.
I need to step back a little bit once this gets launched in May, and do some traveling, because all the traveling I've done for the last, like, you know, 10, 11, 12 years has been related to nuclear, the story of Setsuko and nuclear weapons and all of that. So I would like to do some traveling, that just some things that I haven't gotten to do up until now. So.
Yeah, and self-care. Okay, we are quickly for the last question. We're about to close. Kale, please be brief if you can. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this work that you've done. It's such an intense topic, and I really appreciate your approach and your fortitude and your follow through. So thank you. my angle is, as you can see from my baby picture,
Mhm.
is that the nuclear waste of the nuclear power industry.
Yeah.
And 7 years ago, I was informed that they were going to be putting the waste on the shore in San Diego. And I go, what? Who's in charge? Where's the adult in the room? And that has taken me down a long 7-year dive to learn and research what is going on with the waste. And the waste of the weapons and the waste of from the nuclear power is like, as far as I'm concerned, if we had one tipping point on the larger issue of how we actually ban the bomb, I feel that banning nukes is equally important because of the huge propaganda for so-called advanced nuclear. And I'm following that really carefully of how they're approving the designs and the flaws. Anyway, it's the waste aspect and how poorly it's being stored and how irresponsibly it's being stored. And they do not have a solution for it. And so I feel like I'm just trying to connect the dots as much as possible. And this story is so important. It's just unbelievable that they then went and I just saw a documentary on the bombing of the Marshall Islands and how they actually did it as for experimentation on the people and the environment. And I mean, it's just so grotesque what the powers that be are doing, knowingly or unknowingly. So sanonofresafety.org if anyone's interested in the canister problem. And just again, thank you so much. And have a good vacation.
Thank you. I have to say, I agree with you, Cale, and thank you for your work, because I have been saying this for decades. I had an uncle who was the treasurer of General Electric, and then we would have these discussions about nuclear power plants and their waste. And I was like, you guys frame yourselves as the conservative in the world, conservative party. And I think there's nothing more radical than building power plants that you don't know what to do with the waste, and where's that going to go? And even conservative states won't let them bring that stuff in what's it called, Yucca Mountain or whatever, and they're like, nobody wants it because they know it's going to pollute their water, pollute their soil, pollute the air, and the dangers associated with those thin canisters, as it says in your little picture there, Cale. So I'm 100% with you. It's just horrifying to me. That is radical to me. And now with climate change, everybody's talking about, well, the only one of our strongest solutions is nuclear power plants because it doesn't pollute in the way that fossil fuels do, but we still got the waste. So how's that a solution? I don't know.
Yeah, it's so strange how we can sell ourselves on the craziest ideas, but we can do this. We can have a better world, the world that will continue to last for future generations. So that's important to work on, and just choose the thing that draws you and just do it. Help out everyone, do something, take some time. If you're concerned about something, take action. It's not hard. Just do your part, help out. Anyway, Susan, thank you for this film. Amazing. And we're so thrilled to have you here. We really appreciate what you've done. And so thank you, Mitchie. And Mitchie will be with us later in another podcast. So thank you. And now I'll send it back to Arthur. Arthur, take it away, please.
Well, yes, this has been extraordinary. And I do have, by the way, one more question for you. You were mentioning you formulated it so it could be shown in schools. Are you also using the PBS learning media?
Oh yeah, we've had it. We've put together a teacher's guide quite a while ago, and so yeah, we absolutely are hoping to do that as well. So because it's such a big subject, and a teacher who's teaching social studies or history does not have the time to do a deep dive because we don't teach this. And I've been astonished at how many people say, I thought I was well educated, but I know nothing about what happened when the bomb was dropped. Just that, the pre-packaged, it ended the war, which is not true, but that's how they like to frame this, that the dropping of the bombs ended World War II. And that's all people know, and nothing else. So yeah, we did work very, very thoroughly on a teacher's guide to help people know how to disseminate this information. So, and what the film makes too. So the points it makes.
Yeah, excellent. And I think this film is perfect for PBS Learning Media because there's plenty of short clips that can be shown in the classroom that will have powerful impact with the kids and get them thinking about these things. So good for you for doing the educational outreach as well. And if anyone who's listening has ways that they can help support this or become, I don't know, are you looking for additional sponsors, or your sponsor spots are all used up at this point?
Sponsors for public television broadcast are used up, but you'll learn more about this when you have Mitchie visit. But she's actually doing a speaking tour with the film, and she's calling it From Hiroshima to the Heartlands, because she really wants to get out from the, what we call the cultural elites, on the coasts and whatnot, and get out into the heartland and really talk about this. So yeah, I mean, we can always use that more funding to help her do that next project. So yeah.
Well, maybe we can talk with Jack and others about seeing if we can get you on the Rotary speaker, get you speaking to those groups as well.
Oh, we'd love to come and speak to the Rotary. Thank you. That'd be great. Sure.
This has been extraordinary, and I really appreciate you so much. I noticed Melanie did put the website in, the vowfromhiroshima.com. Anything further people should do to contact you, or specifically to get in touch with you?
Well, any information about that would be on our website, so if people want to reach us, and we also have a distributor for schools and community groups and whatnot, and that's Bullfrog Films. And, but you can reach us through the website. There's lots of different ways, and also ways to watch the film if you haven't so far. So
great. Well, that's in the chat there if you want to save that. Excellent. Well, next week's Action Week, and one of the examples of effective action that's being done is that we have the Albuquerque Peace Festival organizers and others have arranged a screening of television event, but they're combining it as an action screening. So they're going to march 4 blocks away from the theater for music and speeches to ban the bomb. They're going to have the parks is near the Kirkland Air Force Base, which is the largest storage site of nuclear bombs in the USA, and they're going to have musicians performing. So they're combining showing films and action, and we're going to get to have a chance to hear directly from Gene Stevens, who is one of the key organizers of that, saw the film, and learn how we can do that. That kind of action that hopefully will be done with Vow from Hiroshima as well, where we're not just watching a film and as you mentioned, like Ira said, just going home and saying, "She isn't that awful," but we're actually turning that into action to turn things around. So do join us next week for the People Powered Planet podcast at the same time. Join us each week and every week to find out how you can make a difference and can help build the world we choose. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you especially to Susan and Mitchie. And we do look forward very much to having Mitchie on the podcast. You'll get to hear much more from her. And we'll continue to promote the Vow from Hiroshima. And that's an important vow for all of us. Thank you, and see you next week.
World citizen, lift up your voices. Oh, we got something to say. All we need is the same directions, heading in one way.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to our channel and like this video.